The process I'm presenting here is basically a four-step process. The first step is called metacognition, which loosely translated means thinking about our own thinking. Stress, anxiety, and panic originate in our thought processes. Now, ordinarily in a treatment setting, I would take the time here to explain the physiological origins of such and how the whole autonomic nervous system works. But I'm going to skip that for now, and perhaps that will be one of those topics that I sandwich in later. I'm jumping right into the level of thinking. Our thoughts are the entity we have the most direct control over, and we need to learn how to do just that first. So metacognition is the process of getting right down to the heart of what we are thinking, and then actually writing that down on paper, or typing it out, dictating it, or even speaking it out, capturing it on a voice memo on your phone. This is actually my favorite way to do it. It's quick and easy, and I can do it while I'm driving or working out, which often happens to be the time when I catch myself thinking about things. Now, this may sound a bit counterintuitive at first, especially because many of us have gotten very good at trying to not think about what we're thinking or ignore what we're thinking. Now, it's no fun to record our worst fears exactly as we're thinking them, but it is absolutely imperative to do this as accurately and in as detailed of a fashion as we possibly can. If we're going to make corrections to our own thinking, we have to get as close as we possibly can to the actual thoughts we are thinking, as crazy as we might think they would make us feel, or as crazy as we might think they seem to others. The corrected versions that we'll be constructing later need to be derived directly from these worrisome thoughts. That's important. We have to really capture the ones that already exist. Now, if we're not precise about this step, our efforts, no matter how hard we try, will be weak at best and perhaps completely ineffective. And you're going to find this as a common theme in these videos. Many people think that it might help if we just think good things, but they do almost nothing. It's good to think good things, but they do almost nothing to knock down the worry and anxiety. And I'll demonstrate this many different ways as we go. So, just so I'm being very clear about this, we need to keep a running journal of our negative thinking. But before I go any further, let me qualify the idea of journaling. I'm not talking about a diary entry. I'm talking about a scientific kind of journaling. The kind you might do if you were doing a scientific experiment and carefully writing down the things you are observing. It's this kind of journaling that I'm talking about, carefully observing the exact nature of your thoughts. Now, this exercise is one that's aimed at getting to the very heart of what is driving anxiety and panic. And don't be concerned about doing it right or wrong. Just do it and try to capture everything you're thinking when you're worrying. And I will help you sort through it all. No thought is insignificant. In fact, the thought that you might think to be insignificant or just too ridiculous to write down might just be the motherlode of thoughts. The thought I need to really figure out how to construct the most powerful replacement. And if you've already written it down, a thought might keep you let me say it this way. If you've already written it down, you might think that you need to write it again. No, don't write it again. Just put a tick mark by it each time you think it again. Because, we're looking for the individual thoughts, and we're also looking for thought patterns. The quantity, the frequency, the intensity of our thinking. These things all matter, as you soon will begin to understand. And as with just about anything, the quality of the raw materials determines the ultimate quality of the finished product. So the more accurately we complete this first step, the better the rest of the process will flow. Now, for most people, or at least many people, just writing these things down helps. I often hear people say, when I actually wrote it down and read it out loud, it didn't seem that bad after all. But don't be fooled into thinking that's the fix. No, it's just the first step. And don't be fooled into thinking you can sit down and do this once. No, we need to be tracking our thinking all day long, every day, at least until we get on top of it. And at that point, you'll feel so good, you probably won't want to stop doing it then either. And don't be fooled into thinking that you can just sit down at the end of the day and jot it all down. You're going to forget. So, think of your thoughts as you go. Thoughts disappear, kind of like dreams when you awaken. If you don't write them down immediately, they're just gone. So to get in the habit of doing this, I recommend putting a reminder in your phone, perhaps hourly at first, that reminds you to stop and think about what you're thinking. So for example, here are some of the thoughts that clients have shared with me in just the past couple of days, prior to shutting down my office until further notice. Yes, I'm doing my part to enforce social distancing voluntarily. Sure, it's costing me money, but it's imperative that we make personal sacrifices for the greater good of the whole. And so, as of this evening, as a matter of fact, I don't think it's actually going to be voluntary anymore. I think the city of Fort Wayne is going to be on lockdown. So what were some of these thoughts? Well, one client was worried that his dad's dry cough might be the virus, although he admitted that he's really always had that cough. Another client was freaking out when her sister didn't answer the phone. In her head, she pictured her sister dead on the floor with coronavirus. Now, never mind the fact that when she said it out loud, she almost laughed at herself because she knew the virus doesn't drop somebody to the floor like a gunshot. But nevertheless, her brain was busy concocting these catastrophic scenarios. And yet another client admitted that he worried about his kids having enough to eat. Empty store shelves conjured up this post-apocalyptic scenario of hungry, crazed individuals fighting over food supplies. And he even thought about dusting off his shotgun. Now, not to shoot somebody over food supplies, but to go hunting, if needed, for deer or other animals, if protein supplies ran low. There have been thoughts about all of this being a planned attack, intentionally engineered and generated by some diabolical government somewhere, and that there are many more viruses in the hopper, ready to launch right on the heels of this one. Now, many of my clients admit that they don't even like to share these thoughts out loud, let alone record them somewhere where they could be found. It's almost as if we're embarrassed by how we think sometimes. Well, let me assure you, there's nothing to be embarrassed about. I can assure you that we all feel this way, and we've all had pretty crazy thoughts. The only truly crazy thing is to not write them down, or to just try and ignore them, or to just try and not think them. Now that's crazy, because it'll never work. In times like these, especially, human beings tend to do something that we call catastrophizing, or playing out worst-case scenarios. We tend to think the worst. It's just human nature. Now, I'm not going to get into why we do that here, but I am going to say that's not the problem. In fact, I would argue that we all do it. And I would even go as far as to say it's impossible to not do. The problem is that we keep doing it over and over and over without taking the necessary next steps to shut it down, or at least throttle it back a bit. even a 10% reduction, believe it or not, is quite noticeable. Of course, we're going for a lot more than 10%, but you'll be surprised at how much relief can come from a relatively small change, a 10% change, if done correctly. So, just to review, step 1 is about capturing your thinking, getting it all out there on paper, or of course, any other electronic medium as well, and doing that diligently. In fact, I'm going to tell you to get anal about it. I'm even going to say obsessed. Yeah, I'll go there. Being obsessed with capturing your own thinking in detail is a good thing to be obsessed with, especially in the beginning. And just in case you're thinking ahead and questioning the value at being obsessed or giving so much attention to our worrisome thoughts, let me interject right here that once we have formulated the correct thinking, the replacement thinking, then we completely turn our attention to the replacement. As I will explain later, it's not about stopping the unwanted thinking. It's about starting the new replacement thinking and revving that so high that the unwanted, the old worrisome thoughts just kind of fade into the background. They wither up and die, like a branch that's been pruned from a tree and is no longer getting the nutrients to keep it alive. In fact, the process is actually called neural pruning or neural atrophy. Literally letting the worrisome thoughts and the networks that house those thoughts die on the vine by diverting the attention supply, if you will, to the new sapling, our newly created replacement thought. So get busy now. Don't pass go. Start tracking now and don't look back. The stronger the start, the stronger the finish. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Remember, there are no dumb questions. On to step 2.